data centers want proof that there is power available in Colorado, and not just power, but reliable power. Data centers that did leave the state left because they couldn't have any kind of fossil fuel backup. They're not going to rely 24/7 on wind, solar, and batteries. And unlike some people in the state who may not be able to afford to move or can't move for whatever reason, data centers can go wherever they want. And if you don't have reliable power 24/7 and it's not affordable, they're probably not going to come here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of PowerGab, your go-to show for all things energy and environmental policy here in the state of Colorado. I'm Jake Fogleman, joined as always by my co-host Amy Cooke. For this week's show, we want to talk about another familiar topic to us, but one that was brought about by a pretty fascinating article in the Colorado Sun, having to deal with the ongoing problems with accommodating data centers, what to do about regulations for those at the Public Utilities Commission, how to put guardrails against what utilities are requesting in terms of capacity and investments they can make in order to support these data centers, whether or not that data center request turns out to actually be real. So it's a whole Gordian knot that everyone, I think, at the same time is trying to solve. And there are starting to get some traction down at the PUC, especially between Xcel Energy, on some guardrails as to how we're going to approach accommodating data centers.
Spoiler alert. This is actually really simple to solve. You said it perfectly when you called it a Gordian knot. That's absolutely 100% true. Colorado is, as it tends to do when it comes to energy, is completely overcomplicating this. Completely overcomplicated. We have a very simple solution, and we'll get to that. We'll actually share that with you. But first, let's get to the story, because it is good. How many times have I said, or when we've talked about on the show, data centers aren't coming here?
Yeah.
They aren't coming. I told you about the person I heard talking at an event who said, listen, Xcel was approached by 10 different data center projects. 9 of them went to Cheyenne. Why? Because they have power and it's cheaper. So pretty simple. That's all you have to do, cheap power, and actually have it affordable, or have it available and affordable. So I've said, data centers aren't coming. Well, the first line of this story is, the data centers are coming. And I think, where? Where are they? There is one. I admit and actually there are a couple, but other states have dozens.
Oh, yeah. And much larger than the ones we have here.
Yeah. So this idea that the data centers are coming and we're hyperventilating over it. Although I will say this, I'm actually kind of excited, or kind of glad that the PUC is hyperventilating over that, because what I want them to do is to protect ratepayers in this particular case. Mm-hmm. But of course, they're complicating it. I want to start with this. It's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. Which one's going to come first?
Yeah.
The data centers want proof that there is power available in Colorado, and not just power, but reliable power. Data centers that did leave the state left because they couldn't have any kind of fossil fuel backup. They're not going to rely 24/7 on wind, solar, and batteries. And unlike some people in the state who may not be able to afford to move or can't move for whatever reason, data centers can go wherever they want. And if you don't have reliable power 24/7 and it's not affordable, they're probably not going to come here. So they want proof that there is power, and what the PUC wants is proof that a data center will actually stay if they're going to come. So a couple of things that they're requiring. PUC is requiring Xcel to use a set of, quote, principles when negotiating with data center developers, including they want upfront fees, they want 15-year contracts, they want minimum bills, they want security deposits, and early exit fees. They want all of that for data centers, and then of course there's a whole bunch more. But Xcel says to provide power for the data centers it claims it is speaking to, they need $22 billion. Why don't you just may as well say, say 22 bazillion million, whatever,
Yeah.
just make up a number,
Yep.
put it to the exponential level. But $22 billion is what they say they need for infrastructure and power generation to be able to service data centers. And the PUC is not going to approve that.
Right.
They're not going to approve that. Now, we have a simple way of fixing this, but before we get to that, I'll let you pick up on what I just sort of teed up.
Yeah. So these principles and sort of contract, minimums and exit fees and all these are part of what the Sun calls them large load tariffs. We've seen this term pop up in grids all across the country because Colorado's not alone, frankly, in trying to figure out a regulatory paradigm to accommodate this stuff. And like most states, Colorado is falling back on sort of old tricks. It's what can we do at the PUC through strict regulations to try to build these guardrails? And, to their credit, their heart's in the right place. They're looking for ways to protect ratepayers and to protect the integrity of the electric grid as we're getting this massive wave of potential large load. I know you're skeptical, and I'm also a little skeptical too that a lot of it's going to show up. But in theory, anyway, when Xcel keeps coming and saying, look at all 9 gigawatts of data centers want to hop up on a grid that's peak demand right now is like 7.5 gigawatts. I can understand why people are freaking out a little bit by that.
And that's not even that's not even probably accredited capacity at this point.
No, that's actually,
because that's going negative next year.
That's absolutely right. And so I get why people are turning to these sorts of strategies. And so what a large load tariff is basically it cabins off these particular data center negotiations from broader PUC proceedings where normally they would just come and say for a resource plan, we'd say we're projecting this much demand overall on our system. We need to build this much capacity to meet that demand. And so everyone's rates go up as a result. And in theory, anyway, these large load tariffs are supposed to be, the customer, in this case, the data center, pays a certain amount of money and Xcel incrementally adds to build out its system to accommodate this customer. And supposedly that's supposed to shield all of those costs from ever showing up on ratepayer bills. It doesn't always work out that way in practice, but it's a nice thought. But to your point, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't necessarily have to be this complicated, Amy, because there are creative people out there pushing much more market-oriented, I would say, strategies and experimental strategies and innovative strategies for accommodating data centers without potentially breaking the ratepayer bank.
Yeah, and not only that, they've already passed laws.
Yeah.
And ratepayers are completely protected. I'll get to that in just a second. I do want to say here's Will Tours, his contribution to this discussion. Another factor to keep in mind on this is the potential role that load growth can play in actually helping with rates for all customers, Tours said. Now let's just deconstruct that for a second. That would be 100% true if we were talking about residential customers. We were getting this huge influx of people and you were going to build it out and they were going to be charged to the new development and you were going to have all of these new customers on the grid and they were going to, but that you're talking about let's say we're talking about five customers that are going to explode the grid that may or may not be there.
Right.
I mean, what are you going to do when you build out 9 gigawatts of power and the load doesn't materialize?
Even if half of it materializes.
Yeah. So it's laughable, but it still makes it into it's a great quote, but it tells you where they are in all of it. There is no creative thinking. There is an absolute utter lack of imagination on this. And we've seen other states do this. And we actually had the guys on from Consumer Regulated Electricity actually on the show. We've had Travis Fisher. We've had Glenn Lyons. They have talked about this. It is so simple. All you do is let a large load user, like a data center, you let them bring their own power. It is that easy. Unfortunately for the PUC, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, it's fortunate for us, but that no one likes giving up power, apparently not at the PUC or frankly anywhere else in the state, but you would have to let them be their own power producer and their own generator and let them own it. they're not a utility, but what you could do is allow the utility like Excel or Black Hills or, even a co-op, let them have some kind of subsidiary that is able to directly negotiate with a data center, with a large load user, and they'll bring the power. The data center can own it, can manage it, but you hire the utility, because who's better at doing this than a utility?
Exactly right.
You hire the utility to be the contractor that builds it for you, provides the power, maintains it, and it's a separate subsidiary from the regulated utility. It's a new business model for utilities.
Right.
They can potentially get new business. It doesn't impact ratepayers whatsoever, and it is a completely islanded grid. You could even do 2 or 3 utilities. They could co-locate.
Yep.
They could be together, and they have their own generation. They have their own transmission from, you're assuming the power is going to be right there, readily available. You can, build a natural gas generator. If you want you want a parking lot full of solar panels, whatever it is. They choose their own power. They hire a contractor to do that. And again, it could be the utility, because that's where I'd go. If that's, if you want to build power and you want it to be reliable and you want it 24/7, hire somebody who knows how to do it. They hire a contractor, could be the utility. They build it, they run it, they operate it, they take care of it. And it's just between the data center and the contractor.
Yep.
No one else has to be involved in it, not even the PUC.
Yep.
They don't have to be involved in it. You know what? Take something off your plate. Don't worry about it. Let these two handle, let the data center and the utility figure it out. Of course, they have to abide by all state laws and everything else. Safety factors, you want requirements on labor. I don't care. Just they can handle it themselves, and you totally leave ratepayers out of it. We don't have to pay for it. We don't have to worry about it. There is no stranded assets. There's no infrastructure sitting out there being unused that we're on the hook for. Think about that, $22 billion is what Excel wants.
Yeah, it really is just a fascinating potential idea for Colorado that I would love to see the state take seriously, because, like this large load tariff stuff that we're talking about, while their heart's in the right place, there's still drawbacks to that sort of a system. They can't completely cabin off any of those costs from other ratepayers potentially cross-subsidizing. There's drawbacks for the data centers in this case, because this becomes such a complicated regulatory scheme where there's all these benchmarks they have to meet and sign all these contracts and be locked into these deals. Then economic conditions can change, and maybe it no longer makes sense for them to do that anymore. And suddenly they're locked into these contracts. And so it may disincentivize data centers just by having this system in the first place. Whereas the consumer regulated electricity system is sort of, make of it what you will. It's all on you. We're going to let you be an islanded grid, work with, a utility like Excel, for instance, design whatever power you want. A lot of these big companies that are providing data centers have particular sources of power they want. Natural gas is obviously very popular, but there are also those that take climate goals very seriously, and maybe they want to invest in a nuclear plant or a geothermal plant or solar, batteries, natural gas, a mix. Once again, whatever you want, you work that out with the private utility that you contract with. It provides you with that speed to power, because you're going to be exempt from this, grinding, slow regulatory process through the normal PUC means. So it gives you that speed to power that you're so desiring. It gives you the exact power sources that you want to support your operation. Oh, and by the way, ratepayers benefit, because even say things go wrong and it becomes very expensive, guess what? It's not on your plate, ratepayer. It doesn't show up in your bills at all. That's entirely between the well-capitalized data center company and the utility to work out those costs. And so there's really just a ton of upside. The only downside is maybe no one wants to make the leap, in which case status quo. There's no harm, no foul. So it really is a really interesting idea. It's an innovative idea. It brings a new way of doing business to a sector that, quite frankly, is very out of date at this point. We've been doing it the same way, especially in a state like Colorado that has retained the traditional vertically integrated monopoly utility system. It's 100 plus years old at this point, and shaking things up might not be the worst thing. And who knows what knock-on effects we can build from that. So I just love everything about the consumer regulated electricity model.
I do too. I'm right there with you. New Hampshire has already passed it. Illinois has introduced it. Think of that. We're going to let Illinois, I mean, it's Illinois. Yeah. We're going to let Illinois.
That should be a wake-up call.
Yeah, be more innovative than Colorado. Come on, like, stop. The one thing, I hate to say, PUC commissioners, you're just going to have to give up control.
Yeah.
Sorry. You're just going to have to let this one go.
Right.
And you know what, though? It'll just make your lives easier.
That's right.
It's one less thing you have to worry about on your agenda. Your agenda's full as it is. You've got clean heat plan. You're dealing with all this other stuff. Suggest consumer regulated electricity. It's a win-win for everybody. And for the love of God, we cannot let Illinois beat us in free market innovation, but considering where the state is, maybe Illinois is more innovative or more creative in its economic thinking than Colorado is right now. I do think actually this is going to be the trend going forward. I say, we're laughing about everything else, but I do think this is going to be the trend. And this is where I said it in the last show. I'm going to say it again. Colorado is sliding into energy obscurity. You don't have the reputation you think you do. And this is where you need to get outside your bubble, start talking to people who may not agree with you and are in other states. You don't have to talk to just us. Go talk to Wyoming. Just talk to people in the Mountain West. But you are the state is rapidly sliding into this energy obscurity because of its that stranglehold of climate goals has on our economic sector, and that includes energy, where it's got to be wind and solar and batteries or nothing at all. And that is why a number of those data centers didn't come here. They ended up going to Cheyenne because they need power 24/7. And when they're told that they can't have it, when they can't have reliable power 24/7, when it's going to have to be wind, solar, and batteries. Listen, if you're going to invest $1 billion into some big project, you know what you're not going to do? You're not going to let unreliable power dictate the rest of your business model. Yep. It's just not going to happen.
And Coloradans should take this seriously, right? Because data centers, I know a lot of people overstate sort of the economic benefits of data centers. Politicians in particular, like to think of them as engines of job growth. And they're not really a jobs program per se, at least not direct jobs at the data center facility. Yes, they'll have some construction jobs, and there's like 1 or 2 people that have to actually operate the thing. But there's all sorts of knock-on economic benefits to having data centers. It supports the entire digital economy that we live in this day and age, and not to mention the property tax revenues for local communities that host these data centers. Think about all the coal communities that are being forced out of their livelihoods, who would love to have something to at least make a difference in replacing some of that revenue. And so we do have to take seriously, how do we accommodate data centers, even though Colorado has done its level best to make us as unappealing as humanly possible to these data centers. We shouldn't be hostile to them. We should be welcoming things that could potentially benefit not only Coloradans, but the national economy. And so consumer regulated electricity, shoving aside, don't overcomplicate this. Certainly don't make ratepayers foot the bill unnecessarily, and certainly don't make the taxpayers, because everyone loves to do tax subsidies as their go-to solution for this. The solution is staring you right in the face. Open up for a little experimentation in the electricity sector, and you just never know what might happen. I just think it's almost a no-brainer from where I'm sitting at this point.
Absolutely. I was talking to a data center project developer back east, because he was, remember the comment that at the economic summit here was Denver Chamber of Commerce, or anyway, the question was, can you power data centers with wind and solar? And he just said no. I mean, so I talked to the guy at length, and one of the things that we talked about was that, and I actually asked him, I said, do people come to you a lot for Colorado? And they're like, yeah, no, not really. But the other thing on the jobs part, you'll have, politicians or economic development types who will say, oh my gosh, jobs, jobs, jobs. And then you'll have those who are critical of data centers saying, oh, it's just a security guard and somebody at the front door. It's actually, neither one is completely accurate. But he said, you'll find several dozen high-paying jobs for data centers. It's not just one or two security guards walking around. You actually need people in there, and they're, according to him, they're well paid and they're educated, and so it's not just the mall cop. I just want to make that clear, because he was making the point that neither one is exactly accurate. It's not this huge jobs boom, but at the same time, it's not the one or two jobs. It is several dozen that would be employed there. So yeah, there are people for whom, if you were a coal miner and you maybe, you turn Craig Power, if you're not going to let it be nuclear, you're not going to keep it open. You can put a data center up there. By the way, you also have almost automatic cooling because the temperatures are just lower up.
Yeah.
So places like that are attractive to them because of the cooling aspect. But this really isn't rocket science. This is simply a policy issue, and there's an easy solution.
Yeah, it's just sticking. I can't get out of my brain that Illinois is considering this before Colorado. That's stuck with me since you said it.
I know. You can't unsee the video now.
That's
I know,
exactly
it's all
right.
bad. It's all bad.
But on that happy note, as we're coming up on time here, Amy, do you have any takeaways for our listeners from this?
Yeah, and unless this gets figured out, data centers aren't coming. I still will hold to the fact that data centers won't come here until we get this figured out. But the good news is there's an easy fix, a super, super easy fix, consumer regulated electricity. And please do not let Illinois get this before we have it. And then lastly, if data centers don't like what they're seeing in the future of unreliable power in Colorado, that should be a wake-up call for us. Get a generator to firm your own grid.
Great advice, as always. But that does it for us on this episode. If folks like what they saw, they can head over to PowerGab.org to check out our entire back catalog. We produce new episodes every week. We're also available wherever you get your audio-only shows, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to reach out to us to suggest future show topics or guests you'd like to see us interview on the program, you can send that our way at info@powergab.org. We always love hearing from you guys. But until next week, we'll see you.